Hi, everyone, and welcome. Today's session is PubMed versus Medline. What's the difference? My name is Cynthia Choi, and I'm an information specialist with UHN Library and Information Services. On the call, we have Raluca, our workshop coordinator, who will be posting links and resources, and also Melanie, who will be monitoring the chat throughout the session. If you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat, and Melanie will either respond directly or bring them up at the end. And okay, so here are the objectives for the workshop. By the end of this session, you'll be able to describe key similarities and differences between PubMed and Medline, compare features to select the most appropriate database for your research needs, and also access support and resources for UHNLibraries.ca. This session will be focused more on choosing between the two. I will do a little bit of searching. I'm going to do some short demos just to illustrate some of the differences. But we have workshops and training that are specifically for searching and cover it in more detail. So first, we're going to start off with a little bit of background about these databases. We're going to start with Medline. So Medline is a database managed by the National Library of Medicine. It contains journal articles in life sciences with a concentration on biomedicine. It is managed by a medical library that gets government funding. So this is in comparison to a lot of the databases that are for profit, and it has a rigorous selection criteria for journals to be included in the database. It is indexed with MESH, which stands for Medical Subject Headings, which is the controlled vocabulary used by NLM. If the article has a MESH, the MESH is used to really kind of describe the topic of that article. And lastly, Medline also forms the largest component of PubMed, which is why we're comparing the two databases. Medline can also be thought of as a data set that, that can be accessed in multiple ways. For example, if I say Medline, most people are probably thinking about the version of Medline through Ovid, but it can also be accessed through PubMed. And there are also platforms other than Ovid that are not mentioned as often or not as common. For example, EBSCO, ProQuest, and Web of Science. For today's workshop, we're going to be comparing Ovid Medline and PubMed. Both are available through UHN Libraries. And now for PubMed. So PubMed is a free database that also has citations about biomedicine and life sciences. So the scope is pretty much the same. It's also maintained by the NLM, specifically the National Center for Biotechnology Information. But the main point is that it provides access to Medline without a subscription. You can think of PubMed as public Medline. In addition, PubMed facilitates searching in Medline, but also PubMed Central and NCBI Bookshelf. But that doesn't mean everything in PubMed Central or NCBI Bookshelf are added. Some content is just out of scope or don't really meet PubMed's rigorous selection criteria. So PubMed is just a way to access some of the content in these databases. PubMed Central is a full-text archive of journal articles and is generally a bit more inclusive compared to PubMed. And that's because it can include articles that would be in PubMed. So these are articles that are selected by NLM, but also individual articles and preprints in order to fulfill funding requirements. So it often acts like an open access repository that journals use for NIH-funded research. NCBI Bookshelf is an archive for books, but also reports and other documents. This one is a pretty good resource to find great literature, as you might find reports from agencies like NICE or CADIF. So why are we choosing one? Basically, the content is very, very similar to each other. So it's going to be very unlikely that you're going to search both. In addition, the version of Medline available through UHN Libraries, it's called Medline All. That's the most complete and up-to-date version. It includes in-process and ahead-of-print citations, and also stuff that's in PubMed but not Medline. So if you're using Medline through UHN, you really don't need to search both. If you're using a different version through a different institution, for example, there might be minor differences, but you would still probably choose only one. So for today's workshop, we're actually going to be comparing the interface and its features instead of the content. So let's start by, okay, we're going to start comparing PubMed to Ovid Medline. For access, PubMed is free to search, while Medline requires a subscription. They're both updated daily, but Medline has a one-day delay compared to PubMed. I would say in most cases, the one day doesn't really matter. For both databases, you can access the full text articles through the virtual library. Even though PubMed is free, we do have a link on the virtual library, and we recommend using that because it will connect with our collections. So if you if you click on the results, you'll see the blue button there, the Find It at UHN button. And if you click on it, it will check to see if we have access to that article. And this is really useful if you're working remotely or on a personal computer and not connected to the UHN network. So here, main difference is really free access to PubMed and a subscription for Medline. The next part is going to be about searching. But before we really start talking about the differences, I'm just going to do a really quick refresher so that everyone's on the same page. For comprehensive search, you should include subject headings. So this describes the topic of the article and are assigned by the database. In PubMed or Medline, that is mesh. You should also include text words. So these are words that are used by the author or the journal. For example, in the title, abstract, keywords, or the journal name. And now for differences in searching, I'm going to start with PubMed and about how easy it is to use and the reproducibility. So PubMed is generally easier to use. It's meant to be available to the public, and that's because it's easier to use because it translates the search for you. So what that means is that it has an algorithm that works in the background, and it tries to interpret what you searched and map it to an appropriate mesh term. So when you do a really basic search of just one search term, it will automatically add the mesh for you and also search some of the word variations for text words. For example, like a singular and a plural form. If you type in author's name, sometimes it knows to search it in the author field, and sometimes it doesn't work that well and doesn't recognize that it's a name. So it doesn't search in the field, in the appropriate field. And lastly, because it translates the search for you, this makes it less reproducible because that translation or algorithm for that same basic search could be changed in the future. So now I'm just going to quickly go into PubMed just to show what that looks like. The easiest way to access PubMed or Medline is on the virtual library homepage, right under the one search bar under featured databases. We have Medline and PubMed over here. And this is what PubMed looks like. You might be familiar with it. The default is a basic search. So you can just type your topic here and find a few articles. So I'm just going to do a quick example to show the translation for rehab. The interface is usually pretty user-friendly. It's really easy to kind of apply filters over here. For example, if I only wanted articles from the last 5 years. And if you open an article that's on the right-hand side, this is the Find It at UHN button. Just going to clear the filter here. And let's look at some of the results. So we only typed rehab, but it's picking up stuff that doesn't say rehab, stuff like physical therapy, or it says the full word rehabilitation. To look at how PubMed translated this query, you're going to click on Advanced right underneath the search bar and go to the search history, and you open up the details, and this is how PubMed interprets your search. So it recognizes that the concept is about rehab, and you'll see that PubMed adds the mesh term rehabilitation. And that is probably why it was picking up stuff on like physical therapy, even though we didn't search for that word. It also added the full word rehabilitation as a text word, in addition to what we typed, which is rehab, and also the plural form rehabs. And this is really kind of where PubMed really shines. It's really easy to create a search without knowing too much about searching. You can, of course, recreate this yourself using the advanced search builder up here, but you might find that you'll have a little bit more limitations if you're trying to build something that's a little bit more complex. I'm just going to go back in PubMed and going to try another example just to show an example where PubMed doesn't do that well in translation. So I'm going to search for wearables and go to advanced again just to see how PubMed interprets it. So for this one, PubMed doesn't seem to be able to find a mesh term for it, and it's also adding wearability as a text word, which isn't really what I'm looking for. But it did pick up the singular form and also the plural form, which is what we typed. So using this, like going to advanced and looking at the search details here is a really good way to kind of troubleshoot your search if you're getting a bit of weird results or if you want to see what PubMed is doing to your search query. If you were going to fix this, you could probably just add what you wanted here, like the wearable and wearables to text words, and also manually add the mesh by clicking on searching for a mesh with this button down here. And now let's compare this with Medline. So Medline is what we would describe as very literal searching. And what you search is what you get. So if you wanted to search, if we did what we did in PubMed, so if we wanted to just search wearables, the plural form, it won't search the singular form and it won't search wearability. So that means you have to do a little bit more work if you wanted to add word variations. But the good thing is that you also have a lot more control because you can choose what to add and what not to add. Ovid doesn't assume, it just searches what you typed. Another thing is that it won't add the mesh automatically for you. Instead, it provides what they call guided mapping. So if you search for wearables and try to look for a mesh term, it's going to make a few suggestions, but you're going to have to manually add it yourself. You'll also need to add those text words manually. And when you do that, you do have to either select the search fields for your query. For example, .twkf is often used if you want to search a title, abstract, and keywords. Or you can just use a multi-purpose field code .mp, which searches that and a bunch of fields that are likely relevant to you. And Because the database is not translating your query for you, not really doing anything in the back end, your search will be reproducible at a later time. And now I'm going to quickly go into Medline just to do a really basic search and show you how the mesh mapping works. So this is the interface of Medline. In case it's new for anyone, the search history is at the top. Advanced search is the default, and this is where you type in your query in this box. So I'm just going to do a quick search for wearables and just to look for the mesh terms. You need to make sure that this box is checked off, map term to subject heading, and then you're going to click search here. And these are the suggestions from Medline. The first one, wearable electronic devices, seems like it is on topic, but you can also click on it here to look at the full mesh tree, just to see if there's anything nearby or underneath that might be relevant and you want to add. Mesh are organized from broader to narrower. And here you see under wearable electronic devices, there's narrower terms like fitness trackers, smart glasses that you might want to add. In addition, you can go over here on the right side, the eye icon. It opens up the scope note for the mesh. And this is loading, but it basically defines what the mesh means and what it's used for. So this is a definition, and it covers stuff like wearable devices, wearable technology, electronic skin, wearable computers. And I'm going to go back, and let's say I want to add this and all of these as well. I can just check them off individually, or I can just click on this box here for explode, and that includes whatever's underneath. I'm going to click continue and continue again to add it. Okay, just accidentally added it twice. It's going to remove that quickly. But so for the first line, we've added the exploded mesh. We know this one is mesh because it has a / at the end. And EXP just means it's exploded, so it added all the narrower terms underneath. So now we have the mesh, but you also have to add the text words yourself. So to do that, you're going to type your term. Let's say wearable, and then with a period and your search field. So I'm just going to do .mp just for a quick search. So if I type this in, it's only going to search wearable exactly. It won't pick up wearables, the plural form. So I could just kind of wrap it around brackets and do wearable or wearables to make sure I'm picking up both terms. .mp is useful for most basic searches, but if you want to be really specific on what search fields you want to use, if you click on this tab, search fields, it will list all the fields available. So for example, if you just want it in the abstracts, you'll do .ab instead. And now these are on separate lines. So in order to combine it into one search, you can easily kind of check these off and then press combine it with or. And this would be how you would search a basic search for wearables in Medline. If you scroll down here, we also have the Find It at UHN button. Okay, so now we're going to do a really quick activity just so that everyone gets a chance to try out PubMed and familiarize yourself with the database and see how PubMed interprets the search. So I'm going to ask everyone to go into PubMed and search Apple Watch in the basic search. And then use the chat to comment about how it translates the search. Did it do a good job, or is there anything funny with the translation? Or you can just copy and paste it if you'd like. I have instructions on the slide as a reminder to how to find that translation. So if you search up Apple Watch, this is probably what you're going to see. The problem is that PubMed is having trouble interpreting the search as one concept. It broke it up into two, Apple and Watch. So you can see here, it's trying to do a search about apples. You can see that it added some text words, but also added the mesh term for sorry, the mesh term for apple, malice, and also added it as a text word. It's also searching for variations of the word watch, like watched or watching. As a really kind of quick fix for the problem in PubMed, you can put this in quotations to prevent it from searching it as two different concepts. But when you do that, it will only search exactly what you typed. So it's not going to add mesh terms for you. And you're also going to have to add any word variation. So you'll need to add Apple Watches yourself. In Medline, you don't really get this problem because it searches exactly what you typed. It's already searched as a phrase, and you don't really need to add those quotations. So in Medline, for example, if I typed applewatch.mp, that's going to be exactly the same as if I did quotations here, because Medline is searching exactly what you typed. So if you wanted to search the plural form, you're going to have to add it yourself as well. And next is some advanced, I guess what we would call a bit more like advanced techniques. These are search tools used to make your search broader. This time I'm going to be talking about Medline first, because this is really where Medline shines. And really why we use it for stuff like systematic or scoping reviews. So while we say Medline is really literal, you don't really have to type out everything. You're able to create a really comprehensive search easily by using truncation, wildcards, and adjacency operators. Truncation adds 0 more letters. So for example, if you search concuss asterisks, it will search for concuss, concussed, concussions, etc. You can also be really specific if you want to add at most one letter. So you can use an optional wildcard, which adds 0 or 1 letter, really useful for plural forms or British spellings, or a mandatory wildcard, which is in place for 1 letter. Adjacency is also a really powerful tool because it can search for terms in any order within a specified number of words between. For example, the search Apple ADG free watch, it's going to pick up Apple Watch, which is right beside each other, or a sentence that says Apple or Samsung Watch. And that's because Apple is within 2 words of watch. So this is really good for kind of like broadening your search or searching for phrases. So if you want to do a really broad search, Medline is a really powerful database because you can use all of these in combination to cover a lot of search terms in one line. Here's what it could look like when you're using it in combination. These are just some examples, but you can nest some of them in brackets to make it an even broader search so that you're covering a lot of terms at once. The first one is a short example for like smartwatches, smart devices, smart gadgets. And the second one is about remote regions, where I use two sets of brackets to try to search everything at once. The first set is about like remoteness. So I have remote, isolated, or secluded. And the second part is about like regions or places. So this query is going to search for stuff like remote regions, remote locations, but also phrases where the first set of brackets is within two words of the second set. So it's going to search for phrases like locations that are isolated, places that are secluded. In comparison, PubMed has a lot more limitations if you're trying to build a complex or comprehensive search. The most important thing to remember from from this slide is that it turns off automatic term mapping. So that means it's no longer going to translate your query, and you're going to have to add mesh and the word variations yourself. You can use truncation to help with the word variations, but you don't have the single letter wildcards if you want to only add one letter, for example. The adjacency operator is available, but you're limited to certain fields. So you wouldn't be able to search in the journal name, for example, and you can't combine these together. So you end up having to kind of spell out different combinations or word variations. So basically, if you need to create a comprehensive search and use these tools, Medline is going to be a better choice because you can use these in combination in Medline, and you can also choose from many search fields. After you're done your search, you can manage it more by sorting and filtering your results. PubMed has some useful sort options, and that's the order that the results are presented to you, like on the first page, second page, etc. So for example, best match, which is the default, will help you find a few relevant articles fast. Your first few results or even the first few pages are likely to be about your topic. Most recent is also useful if you're just looking for the latest articles. You can also apply filters to limit your results. It has probably, I guess, the most important ones, like the date, article type. For example, if you want to limit to a systematic review or a clinical trial, language, etc. In comparison, Ovid Medline has more limited sort options, but it does have a really wide selection of filters to choose from, including those in PubMed and more. For example, they have a filter for children, pregnancy, adverse effects. When viewing or exporting results, there's generally more limitations in PubMed. For example, the view and export limit is the first 10,000 results. And this is usually not a limitation for most projects because you're likely not screening over 10,000 in PubMed. You're probably limited in some way, or maybe sort it by relevancy and just look at the first few pages. There are also fewer export options for PubMed, but usually I would say it's probably good enough. Like you can get it as a text file, spreadsheet, and can import it into a citation manager. For Medline, you don't have these limitations. So you can view an unlimited number of results. There's a lot of export options available, like RIS, Microsoft Word, Excel, etc. And you can also customize what fields to export. In general, you can make the export a lot more comprehensive. And if, for example, like if I wanted to export as a Word document, I can also add a link to the full text, which wouldn't be available for PubMed. I'd say these benefits of Medline is mainly useful for projects like systematic reviews, where you're going to be dealing with a lot of results. There's also some other useful features you may be interested in, but I don't think it's as important for choosing between the two databases. In PubMed, once you have an article that you're interested in, it's really easy to find similar articles. If you look under the abstract, it will list a few articles, and this is really a kind of like an informal way to find a few relevant articles quickly. Medline also has this function, but I find that sometimes it brings up fewer or sometimes no articles, or sometimes significantly more results, which may be more than what you're looking for in a really quick search. Medline also makes it really easy to export your search strategy. So at the bottom of that screenshot, there's a share search history. You can share your search lines, but you can also share a link to someone else at UHN, and then they can rerun the search as well. Okay. So now that we covered most of the differences between the two databases, which is mainly about the platform and its search functions, I'm going to talk about some scenarios where each database really excels at. I'm just going to say that these are not really hard rules because you can probably kind of recreate a search in either database and you might have a preference for one. For PubMed, it's great for what we call quick and dirty searches. You want to find a few relevant, good articles fast. And this is great for that because it creates a search for you. And then you can just use the filters and sort it by relevancy to just get the top few results. This is really great for clinicians who may only need a few articles to answer like a really time-sensitive question for patient care, for example. It's also great for exploratory searches. So you're just trying to see what's out there, nothing too comprehensive. You're not really trying to find every article on that topic. And once you have some relevant target articles, it's really easy to find similar articles quickly. It's also more user-friendly, so it's great for people who are new to searching because it does some of the searching for you. And also for basic searches where PubMed does a pretty good translation of the search concepts. PubMed is also a great place for research if you don't have access to the database subscriptions. For Medline, here are some of the recommended uses. The first one is when you want more control for a precise or a comprehensive search. And that's because the way you search is the way Medline works is really literal. So you can make it really precise since it's not translating your search. Or you can make it really broad by adding a lot of word variations or using like the truncation, adjacency, etc. And you also wouldn't have the limitations that you see in PubMed. It's also useful for search concepts that are complex or hard to search. For example, your search concept might be expressed as phrases, so you might want adjacency operators, or PubMed might not do a great job at translating that concept. Medline's also ideal for systematic or scoping reviews, where you need a comprehensive, reproducible search. You don't want the search like an algorithm to change over time, especially when you're like updating this search. And you also need to kind of export a large number of results. The other functions over here are just nice to have, such as being able to kind of customize what information you're exporting or choosing from different formats. And our last section is how to get support. So I only glossed over some of the searches in each database for this workshop, but we have specific workshops for PubMed and Medline that go into more detail about searching in each. You can find it on our workshops page. The recordings have chapters and subtitles. You can easily find what you're looking for quickly. If you prefer a live session, or want to ask questions or focus on something specific, you can also request a training session with an information specialist. We also provide consultations about how to improve your search and what resources that you could tap into. And lastly, if you prefer to have someone do the search for you, you can always submit a literature search request. And that is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please complete the evaluation form through the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code. It is a new session, and your feedback helps us continuously update and create new content. We also have a mailing list that goes out just once a month about our workshops, resources, and updates.